In the winter of 2015, a security guard at Bran Castle radioed his supervisor at 2:47 a.m. He said only 4 words: "Something is walking." Then the line went dead for 6 minutes. When contact resumed, he had no memory of the gap. The camera footage from that corridor, the one that should have recorded those 6 minutes, shows nothing but static. To this day, no one at the castle will explain what happened. Some say he quit that night and never came back for his final paycheck. Others say he's still on staff and simply refuses to speak of it. This is the story of Bran Castle, a place tourists know as Dracula's castle, a place locals call something else entirely.
Bran Castle sits on a narrow limestone outcrop in Transylvania, Romania, wedged between the Bucegi and Piatra Craiului mountains. It was built in 1377 by Saxon craftsmen, commissioned to guard a mountain pass that connected Transylvania to Wallachia. For centuries, it was a customs post, a place where merchants paid tolls before crossing into new land. Practical, bureaucratic, nothing supernatural about tax collection. But something about its geography made people uneasy long before Bram Stoker ever put pen to paper. The pass below the castle was known locally as Porta Diavolo, the Devil's Gate. Shepherds refused to move their flocks through it after sundown. Not because of wolves. Wolves, they understood. This was something else. They said the mountain itself listened.
Everyone associates Bran Castle with Vlad III, Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century Wallachian prince whose brutality became legend and whose name became fiction. Historians are divided on whether Vlad ever set foot inside these walls. Some records suggest he may have been briefly imprisoned nearby, or passed through as a captive during a conflict with the Ottomans. The connection to Bran specifically is thin, more marketing than history, many scholars argue. But here is what's strange. The legends predate the marketing. Long before Bram Stoker wrote his novel in 1897, long before any tourism board saw the profit in vampire folklore, villagers near Bran told stories about a Strigoi, a restless spirit that rises from the grave to torment the living. Strigoi lore in this region is centuries old, deeply woven into Romanian Orthodox burial customs. Bodies were sometimes buried face down. Garlic was placed in mouths. Hearts were removed and burned. This wasn't fiction to them. This was funeral practice. Something in these mountains made people believe the dead didn't always stay dead, and Bran Castle sat right at the center of it. In 1920, after Transylvania became part of Romania, the castle was gifted to Queen Marie of Romania. She renovated it into a royal residence, softening its fortress bones into something almost warm. Sunlit rooms, a chapel, secret passages built for her children to play in.
Queen Marie loved the castle deeply. She wrote about it in her memoirs with genuine tenderness. When she died in 1938, her heart, by her own request, was placed in a small golden reliquary and kept in a chapel near the castle for years before eventually moving elsewhere. Local staff at the time reported something curious. Doors in the Queen's old chambers would not stay closed. Housekeepers assumed it was the wind. The castle sits high on a ridge. Wind is constant. A reasonable explanation. But wind doesn't re-lock a door that was left open. Multiple accounts, passed down through 3 generations of caretaker families, describe the same phenomenon. A door is propped open in the morning. By evening, it is not only closed, but locked from the inside. The Queen's private chambers have no interior lock mechanism accessible from outside.
This next account comes from a former night shift security contractor who worked at Bran Castle between 2013 and 2016. He asked that we not use his real name. We'll call him Andre. Andre was hired through a private security firm, not directly by the museum administration. His job was simple: walk the perimeter every 2 hours, check the exhibit rooms, make sure nothing was disturbed. The castle closes to tourists by evening, and after the last staff member leaves, the building empties completely, except for one guard. Andre told researchers that for his first year, nothing unusual happened. The job was boring, cold, lonely, but ordinary. Then, in October 2014, during the week of Bran's annual Halloween festival, when the castle stays open later and draws its largest crowds of the year, something changed. He said the first sign was the temperature. Certain rooms, he said, would drop dramatically for no reason. Not gradually, instantly. He'd walk from one room into the next, and his breath would suddenly fog in front of him, even though the corridor had no windows, no draft, no explanation. The second sign was sound. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the upper floor. The private royal chambers, closed to the public after hours. Andre said he checked. Every time. The upper floor was empty. Locked. No one could have been up there. But the sound continued. Not randomly. Rhythmically. As though someone were pacing. Thinking. Waiting. The incident referenced at the start of this video happened on a night in late November 2015. Andre was doing his standard 2 a.m. sweep. Nothing unusual so far that night, until he reached the narrow servants' staircase that connects the ground floor to the upper chambers. A staircase original to the 14th century structure, barely wide enough for one person. He said the air changed before he saw anything. A pressure, like standing near a closing elevator door. His flashlight, fully charged, tested before his shift, began to flicker. Then he heard it, a single footstep on the stair directly above him, though he could see the entire staircase and it was empty. He said he called it in immediately. His supervisor, back at the base station, has confirmed the timestamp, 2:47 a.m. 4 words transmitted, then silence. What happened during those 6 minutes, Andre has never fully explained. When asked directly, in later interviews collected by regional paranormal researchers, he gave only fragments. He said he doesn't remember walking, but he remembers arriving somewhere, a small stone room he didn't recognize, though he'd walked every inch of that castle for 2 years. He said the room was cold in a way that felt deliberate, like the temperature itself was a decision made by something else. And he said, very quietly, that he felt looked at. Not watched, looked at. The way you feel when someone is studying your face up close, deciding something about you. Then his radio crackled again. His supervisor's voice, and he was back on the familiar staircase, radio in hand, as though no time had passed at all. He resigned 2 weeks later. He has not returned to Bran Castle since.
Skeptics have reasonable explanations for much of this. The castle is centuries old. Drafts, structural settling, and old wood contracting in the cold could explain sounds, temperature shifts, even the sensation of footsteps. Isolation and fatigue can distort perception during long overnight shifts. Andre was, by his own admission, exhausted and unsettled by the time of the November incident, a state in which the mind is known to misinterpret ordinary stimuli as something sinister. That's a fair, rational reading. It may well be the correct one.
But researchers who reviewed staffing records for Bran Castle noted something they found difficult to dismiss. Turnover among night shift security personnel specifically is unusually high compared to daytime staff, going back decades. Multiple contractors over the years have left the position abruptly, citing vague discomfort rather than any single dramatic event. Few offer detailed accounts. Most simply don't come back.
Whether that pattern reflects something genuinely unexplained in the building, or simply the ordinary toll of working alone, overnight, inside a cold medieval fortress with a violent reputation, is something each visitor has to decide for themselves. There is one story that researchers say almost no local resident of Bran village will discuss on camera, though several have referenced it privately. It concerns the land itself, not the castle, but the ground beneath it. Before the fortress was built in 1377, the site is believed to have held earlier structures, possibly a wooden fortification used by the Teutonic Knights in the 13th century. Older still, some regional folklore claims the outcrop was considered a boundary place by pre-Christian communities in the area, a threshold between one world and the next, where the veil between the living and the dead was thought to be thin.
Villages built on such sites, in Romanian folk tradition, are said to inherit a kind of memory. Not a ghost tied to one person, but something older and less personal, a presence that predates whoever currently occupies the ground. Whether that's superstition inherited from a harder, more superstitious century, or something else, is impossible to prove. But it may explain why nearly every era of the castle's use — Saxon customs post, royal residence, communist-era museum, modern tourist attraction — carries at least one story of something not quite right happening within its walls. Different centuries, different occupants, same mountain.
Today, Bran Castle receives roughly 500,000 visitors a year. Most walk through in daylight, take photos beside suits of armor, buy a plastic set of vampire teeth from the gift shop at the base of the hill, and leave without incident. The castle administration has never officially acknowledged paranormal claims. From a business standpoint, that's understandable. Bran markets itself on the legend of Dracula, a safely fictional, family-friendly kind of spooky. Actual unexplained phenomena is a very different, much less marketable conversation. But ask the right person, quietly, away from the ticket counter, a groundskeeper, an older tour guide who's worked there 20 years, someone who's swept those corridors after the last bus has gone, and many will tell you in a lowered voice that the castle has moods.
Some nights it feels like an old building, empty, indifferent. And some nights, they say, it feels like it's paying attention. Andre, the former guard, was asked once by a researcher documenting his account whether he believed something genuinely supernatural had happened to him that night in November 2015, or whether exhaustion and isolation had simply gotten the better of him. He reportedly paused for a long time before answering. Then he said this: "I don't need you to believe me. I just need you to understand that I locked that door myself before my shift started. And when I came back to it, 6 minutes later, it was already locked from the other side."
Bran Castle still stands on its ridge tonight, exactly as it has for 650 years. The fog still rolls through the Devil's Gate below it. The wind still moves through corridors built for men who've been dead for centuries. Whatever walks those halls after the last visitor leaves, memory, legend, or something else entirely, the mountain, as the old shepherds used to say, is still listening. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more true mysteries from around the world. And if you ever visit Bran Castle, try to leave before dark.